Imagine losing everything you've ever known, your entire life's legacy, ripped away in a single brutal moment by someone you once called family. What would you do if your world crumbled, leaving you with nothing but a burning cheek and a broken heart? This isn't just a story, it's what happened to me. Listen to my story until the end, and tell me, what would you have done in my place? It had only been weeks since my son David passed away, a sudden tragedy that left a gaping hole in my heart. I, Eleanor Vance, a dignified widow, felt like I was still walking through a fog of grief. My home, this sanctuary filled with 50 years of cherished memories, with my late husband and David, was the only place I felt safe. The lingering scent of David's favorite pipe tobacco still hung in the air, a constant reminder of what I'd lost. Then, the storm walked in. Victoria Thorne, my daughter-in-law, a woman I'd always suspected harbored a cold ambition beneath her polite smile, burst through the front door. Her eyes, usually so calculating, were now glinting with a chilling triumph. My heart pounded, sensing the danger, but I was too numb from sorrow to fully react. She didn't even bother with a word of comfort, not a single one. In that dimly lit living room, amidst all the echoes of happiness, Victoria's voice cut through the silence like a knife. "The funeral's over, Eleanor. It's time to face reality. This house is mine now." Her words hit me with the force of a physical blow, stealing what little air I had left. I stared at her, utterly bewildered, unable to comprehend the cruelty. How could she even think of such a thing? Then came the demand, cold and unfeeling: hand over the keys and the deed. I tried to explain, my voice trembling, about my legal right to the home, about George and I building it brick by brick, about it being our legacy. But Victoria's composure snapped, revealing the monster underneath. Her eyes narrowed, and a vicious, resounding slap echoed through the quiet house, leaving my cheek burning with pain and humiliation. Before I could even register the shock, she snatched the spare key from its hook by the door, her eyes glinting with pure, unadulterated triumph. "Consider this your eviction notice, old woman. Get out." My mind reeled, my body ached, and my spirit felt utterly crushed. The bitter taste of betrayal filled my mouth as she ordered me to pack a single bag and leave the home I had nurtured for a lifetime. My life before that moment was a tapestry woven with simple joys and hard work. I was born into a modest, close-knit community in a quiet suburban town. People knew me for my sharp mind and a quiet resilience that saw me through many challenges. My moral compass was unwavering, a guiding force in every decision I made. I wasn't flashy, just steady and true. I met George Vance, a kind and hardworking carpenter, and together we built our dream home, brick by brick, filling it with laughter and love. I wasn't just a homemaker. I was the meticulous bookkeeper for George's small business. That work taught me an astute understanding of finances and, more importantly, a deep insight into human nature, revealing how people truly operated behind their smiles. Our son, David, was our pride and joy, the center of our universe. I instilled in him the values of integrity and kindness, creating a life that, while not materially opulent, was rich in emotional wealth and shared moments. This house wasn't just wood and plaster. It was the embodiment of our shared life, our legacy, and the sacred repository of every precious memory we ever made. Stripped of my home, my dignity, and the last physical vestiges of my family's presence, my world crumbled into dust. I was forced to seek temporary refuge with a distant niece, a kind but overwhelmed woman, where I felt like nothing more than a burden. The sting of Victoria's slap, her cruel words, replayed endlessly in my mind, fueling a churning mix of raw grief, profound shame, and a cold, unfamiliar rage that simmered beneath my skin. Neighbors, while offering sympathetic glances and hushed whispers, were powerless to help, intimidated by Victoria's aggressive and swift legal maneuverings. I overheard snippets of conversations, rumors about Victoria's ruthless takeover, the garish redecorating she was doing, and the opulent party she now threw in my home, transforming it into a monument to her own insatiable greed. Each piece of news felt like a fresh, deliberate humiliation. But with each fresh wound, a new resolve hardened within me. This injustice, this callous disregard for everything my family stood for, simply could not stand. I might have looked like a frail old woman, but beneath that exterior, a fire was beginning to burn, fueled by a lifetime of quiet resilience, and an unwavering sense of right and wrong. Victoria Thorne had made a grave mistake. Today you will see how I got my revenge in the best way imaginable after my own daughter-in-law slapped me across the face and stole my home, leaving me with nothing but grief and a burning desire for justice. Imagine losing everything you've ever known, your entire life's legacy, ripped away in a single brutal moment by someone you once called family. What would you do if your world crumbled, leaving you with nothing but a burning cheek and a broken heart? This isn't just a story, it's what happened to me. Listen to my story until the end, and tell me, what would you have done in my place? It had only been weeks since my son David passed away, a sudden, tragic loss that left an unbearable, gaping hole in my heart. I, Eleanor Vance, a dignified widow, felt like I was still navigating a dense fog of grief, each day heavier than the last. My home, this sanctuary we had built and filled with 50 years of cherished memories alongside my late husband and David, was the only place I felt truly safe, a sacred haven. The lingering scent of David's favorite pipe tobacco still hung in the air, a constant, poignant reminder of everything I'd lost, every dream shattered. Then, like a sudden, violent storm, Victoria Thorne, my daughter-in-law, a woman I'd always harbored deep suspicions about, her cold ambition barely concealed beneath a polite, artificial smile, burst through the front door. Her eyes, usually so calculating and guarded, were now glinting with a chilling, undisguised triumph, and my heart pounded with an instinctive sense of impending danger, yet I was too numbed by sorrow to fully react to her ominous presence. She didn't even bother with a single word of comfort, not one. In that dimly lit living room, amidst all the echoes of happiness that now felt like ghostly whispers, Victoria's voice cut through the heavy silence like a sharp, unforgiving knife. "The funeral's over, Eleanor. It's time to face reality. This house is mine now." Her words struck me with the force of a brutal physical blow, instantly stealing what little air I had left in my lungs, leaving me breathless and reeling. I stared at her, utterly bewildered, my mind struggling to comprehend such profound, audacious cruelty. How could she even conceive of such a monstrous thing, let alone utter it with such cold conviction? Then came her demand, delivered with an icy, unfeeling tone. "Hand over the keys and the deed." I tried desperately to explain, my voice trembling with a mixture of shock and indignation, about my undeniable legal right to the home, about George and I building it brick by brick from the ground up, about it being our shared legacy, our very lifeblood. But in that instant, Victoria's composure snapped entirely, revealing the true monster lurking underneath her veneer. Her eyes narrowed into cruel slits, and a vicious, resounding slap echoed deafeningly through the quiet house, leaving my cheek burning with an excruciating pain and a profound, indelible humiliation that branded itself onto my soul. Before I could even fully register the shock of her assault, before my mind could catch up to the sheer audacity of her actions, she snatched the spare key from its familiar hook by the door, her eyes glinting with a pure, unadulterated triumph that chilled me to the bone. "Consider this your eviction notice, old woman. Get out." My mind reeled in a dizzying spiral, my body ached with a deep, pervasive weariness, and my spirit felt utterly crushed, reduced to mere dust. The bitter taste of betrayal, sharp and metallic, filled my mouth, a sickening flavor of broken trust as she stood there, gloating, ordering me to pack a single bag and leave the home I had nurtured, cherished, and called my own for a lifetime. Every memory, every corner, every carefully chosen piece of furniture held a piece of me, and she was tearing it all away without a second thought, without a shred of human decency. My life before that shattering moment, before Victoria ripped away my world, was a rich tapestry woven with simple joys and honest, persistent hard work. I was born into a modest, close-knit community in a quiet suburban town, where people knew me not for any grand achievements, but for my sharp, discerning mind, and a quiet, unyielding resilience that had seen me through countless challenges and unexpected hardships. My moral compass was always unwavering, a constant guiding force in every decision I made, big or small. I wasn't flashy or attention-seeking. I was simply steady and true, a woman of principle. I met George Vance, a kind, hard-working carpenter, with hands that could build anything, and together we forged a life, building our dream home brick by painstaking brick, filling every room with laughter, love, and the quiet comfort of shared dreams. I wasn't just a homemaker in the traditional sense. I was the meticulous bookkeeper for George's small, thriving business, a role that taught me an astute understanding of finances, of numbers, and more. Importantly, a deep, intuitive insight into human nature, revealing how people truly operated behind their polite smiles and carefully constructed facades. Our son David was our pride and joy, the absolute center of our universe, our greatest creation. I poured all my love and wisdom into him, instilling in him the values of integrity, kindness, and honest hard work, shaping him into the good man he became. We created a life that, while perhaps not materially opulent by societal standards, was immensely rich in emotional wealth, overflowing with shared moments, deep connections, and an abundance of unconditional love. This house, the very structure Victoria now claimed, wasn't just wood and plaster, mere bricks and mortar. It was the living embodiment of our shared life, our enduring legacy, and the sacred repository of every precious memory we ever made. Every milestone celebrated, every quiet evening spent together. It was the heart of our family, and she had ripped it out with casual disregard. Stripped of my home, my inherent dignity, and the last physical vestiges of my beloved family's presence, my entire world crumbled into a desolate pile of dust around me. I was forced to seek temporary refuge with a distant niece, a kind but utterly overwhelmed woman, where I couldn't shake the heavy feeling that I was nothing more than a burden, an unwanted imposition. The stinging memory of Victoria's vicious slap, her cruel, cutting words, replayed endlessly in my mind. Imagine losing everything you've ever known, your entire life's legacy, ripped away in a single, brutal moment by someone you once called family. What would you do if your world crumbled, leaving you with nothing but a burning cheek and a broken heart? This isn't just a story, it's what happened to me. Listen to my story until the end and tell me, what would you have done in my place? My name is Eleanor Vance, and just weeks after burying my only son David, my daughter-in-law Victoria Thorne shattered what little peace I had left, tearing away 50 years of cherished memories in my own home. I was still adrift in a sea of grief, the lingering scent of David's pipe tobacco, a painful, constant reminder of his absence, when Victoria Thorne stormed into the dimly lit living room. Her eyes, usually masked by a polite pretense, now gleamed with a chilling, undisguised triumph. Without a shred of comfort for my profound loss, her voice, sharp and unforgiving as a knife, cut through the heavy silence. The funeral's over, Eleanor. It's time to face reality. This house is mine now. Hand over the keys and the deed. My world spun, my mind unable to grasp such brazen, audacious cruelty, her words instantly stealing what little air I had left. I tried desperately to explain, my voice trembling with a mixture of shock and indignation, about how George and I had built that house brick by painstaking brick, about it being our shared legacy, our very lifeblood. But in that instant, Victoria's polite facade shattered completely. Her eyes narrowed into cruel, cold slits, and a vicious, resounding slap echoed deafeningly through the quiet home, leaving my cheek burning with an excruciating pain and a humiliation so profound it pierced my very soul. Before I could even fully register the assault, she snatched the spare key from its familiar hook. "Consider this your eviction notice, old woman. Get out." My spirit, already broken by the unbearable weight of loss, felt utterly crushed, and I knew in that devastating moment there was absolutely no turning back. My story didn't start with a slap across the face or the devastating theft of my cherished home. It began decades earlier, in a small, unassuming suburban town, a place where the rhythm of life was steady and predictable, and everyone knew their neighbors by name. I was born into a modest, close-knit community, where helping hands were always extended without hesitation, and a shared meal at a kitchen table was a cherished ritual. Money wasn't abundant, but our lives were rich with the warmth of genuine human connection and an unspoken understanding of mutual support. My parents, simple and hardworking, instilled in me the profound values of honest labor and unwavering integrity, lessons that became the unshakable bedrock of my entire existence. We learned early to appreciate what we had and find deep joy in the quiet beauty of everyday moments, a philosophy that always guided my path. Even as a young girl, I wasn't one for grand theatrics or seeking the spotlight. Instead, I cultivated a reputation for having a sharp, observant mind, one that instinctively noticed the subtle details others often overlooked, and a quiet, tenacious resilience that saw me through countless childhood scrapes and the inevitable heartbreaks of adolescence. My moral compass was always set true north, an unwavering internal guide that instinctively differentiated right from wrong, no matter how tempting or convenient the shortcuts might appear. This wasn't a principle I passively absorbed from books or sermons. It was deeply ingrained in my very being, a stubborn, unyielding commitment to approaching life and its challenges with honesty and fairness, even when choosing the harder, more principled path. Then, like a beacon of unwavering light, George Vance walked into my life, and with his presence, my world instantly became immeasurably brighter. He was a carpenter, strong and gentle, with hands that possessed an uncanny ability to craft beauty from raw wood, and a heart even larger than his sturdy frame. We first met at a bustling local church picnic, a seemingly ordinary encounter that, with time, blossomed into something profoundly meaningful and eternally lasting. George wasn't given to flashy gestures or boastful declarations. He was simply steady, honest, and possessed a quiet goodness that I cherished above all other qualities. Together, we shared dreams of building a simple, beautiful life, founded on mutual respect, unwavering support, and the quiet understanding of two souls destined to journey together. I knew, with an absolute certainty, even then, that he was the man I was meant to spend my entire life alongside. Together, we didn't just fall deeply in love. We meticulously built a life, brick by painstaking brick, literally constructing our future with our own hands. Our dream home wasn't a fortunate inheritance or a lucky acquisition. It was the tangible result of our collective sweat, unwavering determination, and boundless love. George meticulously designed every aspect, and I, with equal dedication, assisted him with the intricate plans, carefully laying out each room, each window, each doorway, envisioning our future, our family, growing and flourishing within those very walls. We painstakingly filled every corner with genuine laughter, the comforting quietude of shared evenings, and the powerful promise of a future we were actively shaping together. This house was far more than mere lumber and plaster. It was a living testament to our partnership, a powerful symbol of every belief we held dear and every goal we painstakingly worked towards. A sacred space where our enduring love truly flourished and deepened with each passing year. While George was undoubtedly the visible face and driving force of his thriving small carpentry business, I was the quiet, indispensable engine humming steadily behind the scenes. I wasn't just a homemaker in the traditional sense. I was his meticulous bookkeeper, diligently managing every ledger, scrutinizing every invoice, and carefully tracking every single dollar that flowed both into and out of the company. This unassuming role, far from being mundane or tedious, taught me an astute and profound understanding of intricate finances, of how money truly circulated and influenced lives, and, more significantly, it gifted me an unparalleled insight into the complex depths of human nature. I learned to instinctively read people, to discern genuine intentions lurking beneath polite smiles and carefully constructed facades, a crucial skill that proved invaluable, often protecting George from those who harbored ulterior motives and sought to take unfair advantage of his inherent kindness. Our son David was, without question, our greatest joy, the undisputed center of our entire universe. From the miraculous moment he arrived, our lives were immeasurably richer, filled with a new, profound purpose. I poured every ounce of my love and accumulated wisdom into him, carefully instilling the timeless values of integrity, unwavering kindness, and diligent, honest hard work that George and I held so dear and lived by ourselves. We endeavored to create a life for him that, while perhaps not overflowing with lavish material luxuries by societal standards, was immensely rich in emotional wealth, brimming with countless shared moments, deep, meaningful conversations, and an abundance of unconditional love that knew no bounds. He blossomed into a truly good man, a living reflection of the very best parts of both George and myself, and without a doubt, our proudest, most cherished achievement. This house, the very one Victoria so callously and cruelly snatched away, was far more than just wood and plaster, bricks and mortar. It was the vibrant, living embodiment of our shared life, George's and mine, and later, David's. It stood as our enduring legacy, a sacred repository, a veritable treasure chest of every precious memory we ever meticulously crafted and cherished. David's wobbly first steps, boisterous birthday celebrations, quiet, contemplative evenings spent by the crackling fireplace, the comforting, familiar scent of George's pipe tobacco lingering in the air. Every worn scratch on the polished floorboards, every subtly faded pattern on the wallpaper, held a poignant, unforgettable story. It wasn't merely solace my home, it was our collective history, our deeply rooted identity, and to lose it meant losing an irreplaceable piece of my very soul, a tangible, vital link to absolutely everything I held sacred and dear in this world. Life, as is its unpredictable nature, wasn't always a smooth, idyllic journey. We certainly faced our fair share of daunting difficulties, unexpected illnesses, lean and challenging years for George's small business, and moments of gnawing doubt and profound worry that tested our resolve. Yet, through every single struggle, every setback, George and I confronted them together, our hands clasped firmly, our shared resolve unwavering and unbreakable. We learned to adapt with grace, to innovate creatively, and to rely deeply on our inherent inner strength and, most importantly, on each other's unwavering support. These collective experiences didn't break us. Instead, they forged a quiet, steely resilience deep within me, a profound, deep-seated belief that no matter how dark or insurmountable things appeared, there was always a path forward, a lesson that would, tragically, become painfully relevant and crucial in the challenging years that lay ahead. Beyond the comforting embrace of my immediate family, I was incredibly fortunate to be surrounded by a small, yet fiercely loyal circle of friends, and a genuinely supportive community. People like Arthur Art Jenkins, an old and trusted friend of George's, who had long since become more like an honorary member of our family. Art was a street-smart, retired private investigator, a man whose quiet debt of a long-forgotten favor to George from years past still resonated deeply within him. He was the quintessential dependable friend, the kind of person you could unequivocally count on, a true confidant who understood the unspoken language of loyalty, integrity, and unwavering support. These were the true bonds that genuinely mattered in life, the real, invaluable wealth in a world often too preoccupied with fleeting material possessions and superficial gains. Before the sudden, devastating arrival of David's death, and long before Victoria's shocking, cruel betrayal, my life, though gracefully touched by the inevitable sorrows and gentle melancholies that accompany advancing age, was one of profound contentment and deep, abiding peace. I had my cherished home, a sanctuary reverberating with the joyful echoes of love and cherished memories, and the comforting, predictable rhythm of a life, meticulously and lovingly well lived. I felt profoundly secure, firmly anchored by my rich past and quietly looking forward to my remaining years, albeit with the gentle, wistful melancholy of a dignified widow. I could never have possibly imagined that someone could, with such utter callousness, rip away not merely a physical house, but an entire lifetime's worth of meaning, leaving me with nothing but smoldering ashes, profound grief, and a burning, unquenchable desire for true justice. Stripped of my home, my inherent dignity, and the last physical vestiges of my beloved family's presence, my entire world crumbled into a desolate pile of dust around me. The shock of Victoria's actions, the raw pain of the slap, was a physical wound, but the emotional devastation was far deeper, a gaping chasm opening beneath my feet. I felt like a ghost in my own life, a shadow of the woman I once was, utterly lost and profoundly alone in a world that had suddenly turned hostile. I was forced to seek temporary refuge with a distant niece, a kind but utterly overwhelmed woman named Sarah, who lived in a small apartment across town. Sarah meant well, offering a spare bedroom, but her own life was already a whirlwind of demanding work and young children. Every moment I spent there, I couldn't shake the heavy feeling that I was nothing more than a burden, an unwanted imposition, another mouth to feed, another body taking up precious space. The contrast between her cramped, bustling home and the spacious, quiet sanctuary I had lost was a constant, painful reminder of my downfall. I missed the familiar scent of my own pillows, the gentle creak of the floorboards, the way the morning light streamed through the kitchen window. Each small difference felt like a fresh wound, a cruel testament to how utterly my life had been uprooted and discarded. The stinging memory of Victoria's vicious slap, her cruel, cutting words, replayed endlessly in my mind. A tormenting loop I couldn't escape. "Consider this your eviction notice, old woman. Get out." Her voice echoed in the quiet corners of my temporary room, fueling a churning, sickening mix of raw grief for David, profound shame for my public humiliation, and a cold, unfamiliar rage that simmered just beneath my skin. My financial situation, once meticulously managed, was now a confusing, terrifying mess. Victoria had moved with such speed, seizing control of everything, that I was left with little more than the small amount of cash I kept for emergencies and the few personal items I'd managed to cram into a single bag. The bank accounts linked to the house were inaccessible, and my modest pension seemed a pittance compared to the life I'd lost. I, Eleanor Vance, the woman who had always been so organized, so financially astute, now found myself counting pennies, forced to ask Sarah for small necessities. It was a humiliation I hadn't anticipated, a bitter taste of helplessness that was foreign and deeply unsettling. Every transaction, every grocery list, was a stark reminder of how completely Victoria had stripped away my independence and my sense of security. Neighbors, while offering sympathetic glances and hushed whispers when they saw me, were utterly powerless to help. Their pity felt like another form of degradation. Some were simply intimidated by Victoria's aggressive and swift legal maneuverings, afraid to cross her. Others, perhaps, were just uncomfortable with the messiness of it all, preferring to avert their eyes and pretend nothing had happened. No one dared to directly confront Victoria. She was a force, relentless and cunning, and her sudden, brazen takeover of my home seemed to solidify her power in their eyes. The community, once a source of comfort and familiarity, now felt like a stage where my personal tragedy was playing out, with everyone watching but no one truly intervening. I was alone in my fight. Then came the rumors, like tiny, poisonous darts, piercing my already wounded spirit. I overheard snippets of conversations in grocery stores, whispers from acquaintances who were uncomfortable meeting my gaze. They spoke of Victoria's ruthless takeover, her almost immediate redecorating of my home. "Did you hear what Victoria's doing with Eleanor's house?" one would say, followed by a gasp. The descriptions were always the same: garish, extravagant, a complete transformation of the home George and I had built with such love and care. My carefully chosen curtains, my antique furniture, the paintings David had given me, all gone, replaced by Victoria's ostentatious taste. It felt like she wasn't just redecorating, she was erasing every trace of me, of us. But the worst was yet to come. I heard about the opulent parties Victoria now threw in my home. Loud music, flashing lights, laughter echoing through the rooms that once held quiet, cherished memories. She was parading her triumph, flaunting her ill-gotten gains, transforming our sacred space into a monument to her own insatiable greed and vulgar ambition. Each piece of news, each whispered detail of Victoria's lavish new life, felt like a fresh, deliberate humiliation. It wasn't just the loss of the house, it was the desecration of everything it represented. She was not only living in my home, but actively spitting on my legacy, mocking the quiet, dignified life George, David, and I had built together, reducing it to a playground for her vanity. People started treating me differently. The respect I once commanded as a respected widow, a pillar of the community, had evaporated. Now I was just poor Eleanor, the old woman who had lost everything, the one whose daughter-in-law had taken advantage. Their pity was almost as hard to bear as their disdain, painting me as a victim, a failure who couldn't protect her own. I felt invisible, stripped of my identity, reduced to a tragic anecdote. My sharp mind, my resilience, my decades of hard work, none of it seemed to matter anymore. In their eyes, I was simply an unfortunate, frail old woman, easily discarded, easily forgotten, a testament to what happens when you let your guard down, when you are simply too trusting. The cumulative effect of these small defeats, these constant reminders of my powerlessness, deepened the pain. It was a slow, agonizing descent into despair. I would lie awake at night, the silence of Sarah's spare room amplifying the ache in my heart, the burning shame on my cheek. I was at rock bottom, truly and utterly broken, with seemingly no way out. There were moments I thought about giving up, about simply fading away, letting Victoria win. The grief for David was still a heavy shroud, and the injustice felt too monumental to fight. What could an old woman, with nothing left, possibly do against someone so ruthless and well-connected? The odds seemed insurmountable, the battle already lost. But with each fresh wound, each humiliating rumor, each night spent staring at a ceiling that wasn't my own, a new resolve hardened within me. That cold, unfamiliar rage, once a simmering ember, began to ignite, fueled by a lifetime of quiet resilience and an unwavering sense of right and wrong that had always guided me. This injustice simply could not stand. Victoria Thorne had made a grave mistake. She had underestimated me. She had seen a grieving widow, a frail old woman, and thought I was easily defeated. But beneath that exterior, a fire was beginning to burn, not of fleeting anger, but of a steely, unyielding determination. I might have looked like a victim, but I was about to become something far more dangerous. I might have been at rock bottom, stripped of almost everything, but I still had my mind, my memories, and a fierce, burning desire for justice. I would not allow her to get away with this. I would not let her desecrate my family's legacy. Victoria had taken everything, but she couldn't take my will to fight back. Not yet. Not ever. A quiet, almost imperceptible shift occurred within me. The tears still came, but now they were accompanied by a cold resolve. The grief remained, but it was now laced with a new purpose. I would find a way. I had to. I would reclaim what was mine, not just the house, but my dignity, my peace, and the memory of my husband and son. The quiet determination that settled over me after all that suffering wasn't just about anger, it was about clarity. Victoria saw a grieving old woman, someone easily pushed aside, but she completely missed the woman who had managed a small business for 50 years. She thought she had stripped me of everything, but she couldn't take my mind, or the meticulous habits I'd built over a lifetime. It was in those long, sleepless nights, replaying every insult, every loss, that a quiet voice inside me started to whisper, "You still have cards to play, Eleanor." My years as the bookkeeper for George's carpentry business weren't just about balancing ledgers. It was a masterclass in observation. I learned to spot patterns, to see the subtle inconsistencies that told a deeper story. I saw how people tried to cut corners, how ambition could warp integrity, and how quickly promises could turn to dust. George always joked that I could read between the lines of a balance sheet, but it was more than just numbers. It was reading human nature, understanding the hidden motivations behind every transaction. Unbeknownst to Victoria, or anyone else for that matter, I had always kept a separate, meticulously detailed set of records. Not official ones, mind you, just my own personal system. It was a habit born of caution, a way to double-check everything and make sure George was always protected. These records, tucked away in an old, unassuming box in a dusty corner of my niece's attic, contained not just the true financial history of George's business, but also certain observations I'd made over the years. And then there was the safe deposit box. It wasn't large, and it certainly wasn't flashy, but it held two crucial items. First, a small, overlooked investment portfolio George had started years ago for our, quote, rainy day, something Victoria had completely missed in her greedy rampage. Second, and far more potent, was a collection of truly embarrassing financial information about Victoria's past debts and a history of questionable dealings that predated her marriage to David. I had gathered those details about Victoria slowly, almost unconsciously, long before she ever became my daughter-in-law. My astute understanding of human nature had always made me wary of her polished facade. I'd quietly asked a few questions, listened to snippets of gossip from old acquaintances, and pieced together a picture of someone far more manipulative than she let on. She was good at hiding things, but I was better at noticing them, especially when it came to money. Another critical piece of the puzzle one Victoria believed she had utterly destroyed, was the original, untainted deed to our home. George, bless his careful soul, had always insisted on keeping the original in a fireproof safe, not at the bank, but in a secret compartment he'd built into the fireplace mantel. Victoria, in her haste and arrogance, had simply assumed her falsified document was the only one that mattered, never bothering to look for George's hidden safeguards. But my greatest secret weapon wasn't a document or a hidden fund, it was a person, Art Jenkins. Art was an old, trusted friend of George's, a man whose gruff exterior hid a heart of gold and a mind as sharp as a tack. He was a retired private investigator, someone who knew the city's underbelly, as well as its polite society. George had done him a significant favor years ago, a quiet act of kindness that Art had never forgotten, a debt of loyalty that now, unexpectedly, became mine. I reached out to Art with a trembling hand, explaining everything. His reaction was immediate and fierce. "That monster slapped you, Eleanor, and stole your home? George would be spinning in his grave." He wasn't just sympathetic, he was outraged. Art had a network of contacts that stretched into every corner of the city, and he knew how to get information without anyone ever suspecting. He was delighted, almost invigorated by the prospect of coming out of retirement for this. Victoria, in her insatiable greed and monumental arrogance, had made a fatal miscalculation. She had seen me only as a frail, grieving widow, an easy target, a woman whose life had ended with her son's. She never once considered that the quiet bookkeeper might have kept secrets, or that the gentle homemaker might have a loyal, street-smart private investigator as an ally. Her blindness to my true capabilities would be her ultimate undoing. With Art by my side, with my hidden records, the secret investment, and the true deed safely in hand, the game had fundamentally changed. I was no longer just a victim. I was a woman with a plan, a woman with resources Victoria couldn't even fathom. The sting of her slap still burned, but now it fueled a cold, calculating resolve. Revenge wasn't just a fantasy anymore. It was an inevitable, meticulously planned reality, and I was finally ready to make her pay. With Art's help, I started my quiet war. He was a ghost, moving through the city, gathering whispers about Victoria. We learned she was desperate for quick cash, trying to leverage Times My House for some shady business venture. My old records, the ones Victoria never knew about, revealed her history of bad debts and shaky deals. Art, with a clever nod, helped me subtly leak this information to some key people in the local business world. Nothing direct, just enough doubt planted here and there. Soon, banks started looking at Victoria's loan applications with a lot more suspicion, tightening the screws on her desperate plans. Her sources of quick capital began to dry up, just as I'd hoped. Next, the legal front. Art put me in touch with a sharp lawyer, Mr. Davies, who had a reputation for being ethical, but utterly relentless. I brought him the original deed to my house, the one George had hidden so cleverly in the fireplace mantel. Victoria, in her arrogance, had only focused on her manipulated papers, never suspecting a real one existed. Mr. Davies used this to meticulously challenge her fraudulent claim. We started setting legal traps, small maneuvers that seemed insignificant at first, but each one slowly tightened around Victoria. She was too focused on her grand schemes to notice the careful, legal net I was weaving. Then came the public side. I wasn't looking for a shouting match. I wanted a whisper that became a roar. Art, with his network, knew just how to make things accidentally appear. Anonymous tips started landing on local journalists' desks, not just about Victoria's current schemes, but about her checkered past, her financial manipulations, and yes, even the slap and my eviction. Suddenly, the community, which had been too scared to speak, started seeing Victoria for who she really was. The opulent parties in my Meg's house now seemed less glamorous, more like a desperate display from someone with something to hide. Victoria, sensing her money problems mounting and the legal walls closing in, became desperate. She tried to rush the sale of Tamanish House to a dubious buyer, a quick cash deal to salvage her failing venture. But what she didn't know was that George, in his infinite wisdom, had included a specific clause in the original deed, a safeguard against quick, unethical sales. This forced a public legal showdown, precisely where I wanted her. She thought she was selling a house. She was actually walking into the final, undeniable trap I had laid. The stage was set for her grand public fall. The courtroom was packed, buzzing with reporters and curious neighbors. Victoria, usually so composed, looked visibly rattled. I testified with quiet dignity, detailing her cruel actions, the slap, the eviction, the desecration of my home. Art presented his damning, corroborating evidence, tying all her lies together. The judge, after hearing everything, ruled decisively in my favor. Victoria's claim was declared fraudulent, and the house, my home, was restored to me. She was stripped of everything, facing public disgrace, financial ruin, and potential legal charges. As they led her away, her face a mask of fury and disbelief, I simply stood tall, a quiet, knowing smile finally gracing my lips.